This is the Truckers Network radio show. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelley. We're talking about violence prevention and safety today. We have Sabrina Osso, founder and CEO of Osso Safe, on the show. Sabrina, you were talking about apps that truckers can use that detect violence. I didn't know about those. How exactly do those work?
Yes, there are several on the market, and I believe most of them are a free download, and then maybe you have to pay. Usually, you have to pay like some monthly fee every single month for the monitoring. But for example, there is one called. I mentioned a couple of them before, but for example, there's one called Scream Alarm, and this is a one-button system that lets off a loud alert that sounds like a voice in order to ward off any potential assailants. So that is one way of kind of protecting yourself. I believe I mentioned Silent Beacon. That is another app, and it has the ability to send text messages, push notifications, emails, and voice calls to emergency contacts with a single touch. And it can be set up to call 911, emergency responders, or any contacts that are stored on the user's device. So if a trucker has, for example, like I mentioned before, the police, and they know their destination is El Paso, Texas, but they live in another part of Texas, they could have this number in the app, and that way, if there is trouble, the police will be notified and get to and track one's location in real time via the GPS monitoring. There's another one called the Red Panic button, and that is, it's pressed, it sends Google Maps a link to the user's emergency contacts. So there are several out there. I am developing one myself, and like I said, it is being updated, and it will detect violent-like movements and captures them in real time, issuing alerts. So basically, that way you're not responsible for your safety. It'll detect it for you. But all of these that I mentioned, and it's worth mentioning again, Circle of Six, Bond, React Mobile, Scream Alarm, Silent Beacon, Be Safe, that's the letter B, and then Safe, Red Panic button. And then there's others, and I highly recommend them for your truckers for sure, because it could mean a life or death situation, really.
And Shelley, the rideshare community, the drivers who do Lyft and Uber and so forth, also have an app built in to that, so that they can very quickly and easily press a button that will do a lot of what Sabrina's describing as well. And it also can reach back to Uber headquarters or whatever, and they would immediately hear what's going on in the car and can dispatch police and that kind of stuff. Also, right. you want to have a camera that will immediately stop and protect data in the midst of a car accident or violence in the front seat or whatever, that would stop and say, okay, something's wrong here, and save that data and make sure that it records what's happening next.
Right, and this is a good point. Yes, it does have, most of these, if not all of them, have the capability to record. So that way you have proof, and you'll have a face to match the assailant and so on and so forth. And most of them have audio and video capability. And I'm looking here, they are pretty much free, these smartphone apps. So it's definitely worth looking into, researching, and finding out which one works best for you as a driver, as a trucker, for sure.
Sabrina, I'm intrigued with your app. You said it detects violence. How does that work?
Yes, it's mostly AI, artificial intelligence, and facial recognition. I can't talk too much about the details because sure. It's a patent. It's all patent related, but it's being updated as I'm speaking to you, and it's definitely something that I'm implementing for Osso Safe by combining education and technology to keep homes safe as far as residency. So I feel that this is a very important component in regarding safety in the home, safety while you're driving, safety in school. And let's face it, these days, especially, safety is on everyone's mind, really.
Absolutely. Well, gosh, schools are so much different than they were 30 years ago. Or 40 years ago. It's just, it's absolutely scary what goes on. And
yes,
like you were saying, violence is a learned behavior, and it would be nice to stop it before it starts when children are growing up. Right.
Yes. I have to say, and I say this in my TEDx talk, if you trace back every shooter that went on a shooting spree in the schools, if you trace their home life, it was violent, chaotic, dysfunctional, abusive. So we really need to nip this in the bud and make homes safe. So that way it doesn't escalate to a Nicholas Cruz going on a shooting spree in Parkland High School in Florida, where he killed how many people, how many students and teachers. So when you try to solve it at that point, it's almost too late to do anything because people are murdered. And what can you do about a death at that point? You can't do anything. So it really needs to be the training, which is what we do at Osso Safe. We do the education right in residency, right from at home. We make this a standard condition of residency. And I could speak more about that later in the interview. But we feel that residency is where it's at.
Do you actually work with say the parents are the ones that are violent? How do you retrain them? And certainly you probably get a lot of pushback because there's a lot of denial, and this is the way they learned. So how do you do that?
We are introducing into the market, the real estate market, the Osso Safe certification, and this will make a property. Right now, we're really concentrating on the landlord-tenant community, and this is where we are saying to landlords, get your property Osso Safe certified, and that means they purchase something called the Osso Safe Home Sweet Home package, and it consists of a policy, a seminar, and the app. The policy is basically saying, look, I promise to provide you a safe space for you to live. You, in turn, as my tenant, you promise to not act in any way, shape, or form that is abusive. Otherwise, you, the abusive tenant, gets immediately evicted from the premises. But we go into full knowledge knowing that that would be the consequences. And then the victims, and that could be male or female, you know, a victim, whether they're male or female, it's horrific either way. You get to stay in the place of residence, provided that you could still pay the rent, and your children get to stay there, obviously. And we do, before we give any keys to a property to a tenant, you have to take this seminar, and this seminar is a blanket seminar. We educate on facts, statistics, warning signs, definitions of abuse, the difference between abuse and discipline. So that way we're fostering a safe environment. Everybody gets educated equally. We don't pinpoint, oh, you look like an abuser, you look like a victim. Absolutely not. We do this as a blanket education. So that way everybody's on the same page, and it makes everybody in the building feel safe, along with the app, which removes the he said, she said factor.
Oh, absolutely.
And there's other components to it, but those are the main components of the certification.
You know, it's interesting when you said there's a difference, obviously, between discipline and abuse. Depending on how people have been raised, they don't know the difference because their parents did that. So it's breaking a cycle.
Right. And in order to break the cycle, we have to educate, and repetitive education. This is why we say at Osso Safe, it's got to be a practice. It's a practice. It's not one and done. So correct. If you grew up with violence, your chances of repeating that violence is highly likely. So, but if you live in an Osso Safe certified building, the probability of that happening is a lot less, because it's now a standard condition of residency, and we do this as a practice to get the property Osso Safe certified, one residence at a time, really.
Well, that's what you have to do. It's like one day at a time, one residence at a time. It makes absolute sense. It's a gradual process. This is the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.Live. I'm Shelley Johnson with Tom Kelley. We're talking about violence prevention and safety with Sabrina Osso, founder and CEO of Osso Safe. She's got some wonderful insights. I can't wait to hear some more information that she has for drivers. There's so many things to talk about today.